Hello and welcome to this edition of Tips and Tricks. Now today I'm going to be talking about spinnerbaits and why you should always run a trailer on spinnerbaits. Most people I see when they throw a spinnerbait, they throw it just like this. Just a skirt, no trailer on it. A lot of people like to put a trailer hook on it, but they seem to always run them with just a skirt. And I always run them with the trailer, and everything else you run that is a jig, either a chatterbait, a swim jig, even a regular jig on the bottom. Buzz baits for the most part too. I always see most people always have a trailer on them. But it seems like a lot of the time people run spinnerbaits with just a skirt and no trailer or a trailer hook. I've always ran them. Even back when I first started, like 40 years ago, I always put a plastic trailer on a spinnerbait. Now, the reason I do that is because, I don't know, I just don't like it like this. With that just bare hook and then the skirt and the water. I think it has a much better profile when you run it with a trailer on it, a plastic trailer. I mean, you can see this one. This is actually a 4-inch grub. This is actually a generic grub. The grubs I really like to throw on is a 4-inch Kalins. They just have a really thin tail. The tail works, has a lot of action even at slower speeds, and it doesn't create much resistance. So yeah, that's what I always run them with, and I will run them. You can see where I have this. It's actually, you know, right. The curly tail starts right where the skirt stops. So the curly tail is just spinning right there at the end. Looks like a little tail of a fish. Like I said, I will usually use a 4-inch grub, but I will also use a little curly tail worm as the trailer. And I usually use the ringworms, the ones that are kind of thicker and fuzzier. And like I said, I just don't like it like this. I don't know. To me, it's like running a chatterbait without some sort of trailer on it. It just doesn't look as well. This gives it a much better profile, more of a fish profile. That grub, especially because it's a little bit thicker, it just gives it a little bit more bulk. Obviously, you can't run a trailer hook when you're running them this way, but I have a really good hookup ratio on spinnerbaits. I hardly ever have them swipe at it and miss it. I mean, maybe it's because I always run a trailer on it. Maybe because the trailer's there, they want to come a little bit deeper onto it to grab it. I mean, I don't know, but my hookup ratio on spinnerbaits is usually pretty good, and they're hooked really good. I've never really had the need to run a trailer hook on it. But like I said, maybe it's because I always run it with a plastic trailer on it. Now, another thing about these and why, well, I'll go in a little bit more on why I picked the curly tail trailer. Because the fact is, spinnerbaits are only effective when they're running straight up and down. That's when they're effective. Straight. If they're coming in like this to the side or over to the side or anything, they're not as appealing. They don't work the same. The fish will not hit them as well as if it's coming in straight up and down. Yeah, so if you get that sideways. Now the reason I put the curly tail on it is because the curly tail doesn't have much resistance. I mean, you have the blade, and the blade is creating a resistance. And well, this is a 1/4 ounce. I usually fish 1/4, 3/8. Reason why this is very important with what kind of trailer you put on it. It's not as much when you get into, anyway, this is a 3/8. Ones that are like a 1/2 ounce, 3/4, 5/8, you know, heavier spinnerbait, especially when they have willow leaves and not Colorado blades, or widow blades, not. But okay, so we went over that. It's got to be straight up and down. Well, if you put something on the trailer like a swim bait, and that's why I don't like swim bait paddle tail trailers on swim bait trailers on a spinnerbait, because it creates, this paddle tail creates more resistance. And what happens is, especially on your lighter spinnerbaits, as you're bringing that in, that paddle tail, it starts creating more resistance than the blades. I mean, it's Colorado, so it creates pretty good resistance. But if you're running a willow on it, most people like to run double willow, they don't have much resistance. The resistance of the swim bait will be stronger than the resistance of the blades, and that'll cause it to twist either one way or the other, because this is more resistant, so it's trying to be pulled up compared to the resistance of the blades. That's why I prefer curly tails over paddle tails, because of the amount of resistance, because they will cause it to turn, which makes it less effective and less appealing to the bass. So there you go, guys. Yeah, I said I will watch them every time I bring them in. I want to make sure they're running. If I maybe run them a little too fast and it's causing it to turn, I might take this bulkier thing on and put on a thinner little worm so it's less resistance on it, or I will slow down the bait so it's running straight and not coming in sideways. But yeah, I said I've never done it. I mean, just because I know that's what it'll do to the spinnerbait. When you run one of these on, especially when you're running the Colorado and the double Colorado, which most people throw, because there's not much resistance with these blades compared to Colorado blades. And like I said, a 4-inch, that's usually the size of grub. This is a little 4-inch grub. Or like I said, the ringworm, something that's a little bit bulkier but has the little curly tail on it. But yeah, guys, I just said I see a lot of people throw them. I see them in videos when I pull out a spinnerbait and throw them. They always have them just like this, and I just can't. You know, I'm like, why? Anything else that's pretty much a jig that you throw, you put a trailer on it. But for spinnerbaits, for some reason, people don't. And so that's why I'm saying always put a trailer on it. I bet you will get probably bigger fish and more fish, and actually better hookups than that, with something that has a plastic trailer on the spinnerbait than if you just have it with the skirt alone. And I said I'm a lighter at 3/8, quarter. I said as far as the putting on the, kind of recapping here, when you get to the bigger ones with a smaller, until next time. Things running completely straight up and down, or if it's twisting. That'll be a good way to tell before you start throwing it. But there you go, guys. That's gonna do it for this little tips and tricks. Always put a trailer on your spinnerbaits. I'm telling you, you will find that you will catch more fish, probably bigger fish, and they'll probably seem to not swipe as much and eat it better. I hope this helps. Until next time.